My hands were shaking before Danny even opened his mouth. I knew what he was about to do, and I knew it was going to go badly, and somehow, I still couldn't stop him. We were in the middle of Xenocombatives, the one class every school in the district had been forced to add after the alien exchange program started. Coach Ellery had barely finished explaining the rules for the sparring rotation when Danny stood up from his chair, walked straight across the room, and stopped in front of Vexthera's desk. She was the only Thren in our entire school, maybe the only one in the whole city. Small, quiet, with skin that caught the light in a strange violet shimmer, and eyes that blinked in a rhythm that never quite matched a human's. She never spoke, unless someone spoke to her first. She never looked for trouble. But trouble had decided to find her anyway, and it was wearing Danny's Letterman jacket. "I heard you people are supposed to be dangerous," Danny said, loud enough that the whole room turned to look. "I want to see it for myself, right now." I sat 2 rows back, gripping the edge of my desk. My name is Ethan, and up until that moment, the most exciting thing that had happened in Xenocombatives was a fire drill in week 2. I had no idea I was about to watch something that would end up on every screen in the country by nightfall. Vexthera looked up slowly. She didn't seem afraid. She didn't seem excited either. She simply looked at Danny the way someone looks at a math problem they already know the answer to. "You want a demonstration?" she said. "I want to see what you've got," Danny said, grinning at his friends like this was already won. Coach Ellery opened his mouth to shut it down, but before he could get a word out, Vexthera stood, closed her notebook with a quiet click, and said 4 words that changed the entire mood of the room. "Then let's not wait." The class exploded into whispers. Chairs scraped. Phones came out of pockets before anyone even asked permission. Coach Ellery raised both hands, trying to regain control, but it was too late. 25 students were already moving toward the padded training room at the back of the gym, pulled along by the kind of electric excitement that only happens once or twice in a school year. I don't even remember standing up. 1 second I was in my seat, and the next I was being swept along in the crowd, my heart pounding harder than it had any right to, considering I wasn't the one about to fight. The training room was small, walled in blue padding, with a single strip of harsh light running along the ceiling. Danny stepped onto the mat first, rolling his shoulders, cracking his knuckles, playing to the crowd gathering at the glass. He had wrestled since he was 7 years old. He had a trophy case at home that took up an entire wall. He was fast, strong, and completely convinced that nothing in this room could touch him. Vexthera stepped onto the mat a moment later. She didn't stretch. She didn't posture. She simply stood there, feet planted, arms loose at her sides, watching Danny with the calm patience of someone waiting for a bus that was already running late. Coach Ellery pushed through the crowd, looking like he desperately wanted to stop this, and knew he had already lost that battle 5 minutes ago. "Controlled contact only," he said. "First takedown or tap out. Nothing else. You understand me?" Danny nodded without looking away from Vexthera. She gave a single, small nod of her own. The room went quiet. Not silent, but quiet in that specific way a crowd goes quiet right before something big happens, when even breathing feels too loud. Danny moved first. He came in low and fast, the same double-leg takedown that had won him 3 regional titles, the kind of move that had put bigger, older opponents flat on their backs before they even understood what happened. I had seen him do it a dozen times. I expected to see it happen again. I did not see it happen again. One moment Danny was flying forward, arms wide, aimed straight at her waist. The next moment, he was airborne, twisting sideways, and then he was on his back on the mat, staring up at the ceiling, with Vexthera standing over him, her foot resting lightly against his chest. Not stomping, not crushing, just resting there, like a hand placed gently on a door to say, "That's far enough." Nobody in the crowd made a sound for almost 3 full seconds. Then the room erupted. Phones flew up in every direction. Someone shouted so loud it echoed off the padded walls. Danny lay there blinking, more confused than hurt, his chest rising and falling fast, his pride clearly bruised far worse than his body. "What?" he said, voice cracking slightly. "How did you even... I didn't even see." "You committed everything to one direction," Vexthera said, stepping back and offering her hand to help him up. "He didn't take it. On my planet, that is the very first lesson we learn. Before we learn to read, we learn not to give away our balance. She said it plainly, without a hint of pride in her voice, the way someone explains why the sky looks blue. But the room didn't hear plain. The room heard something else entirely, something that would spread through every group chat and every school hallway within the hour. The alien girl nobody had paid attention to for 2 months had just taken down the toughest kid in our grade in under 4 seconds, and it hadn't even looked difficult for her. Coach Ellery clapped his hands together to break the spell. "Show's over. Everyone back to your seats now." Nobody moved right away. Everyone wanted one more look, one more replay on someone's phone screen, one more confirmation that what they had just seen was real, and not some trick of the light. I stayed near the back of the crowd, watching Vexthara's face as the room slowly cleared out. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't celebrating. If anything, she looked almost uncomfortable, like she had just done something she wished nobody had noticed. That evening, the video was everywhere. By the time I got home and opened my phone, it already had hundreds of thousands of views. By the time I finished dinner, it had crossed 1 million. People had given it captions like, "Alien Girl Ends Wrestling Career in 4 Seconds," and "Small but Deadly," and my personal favorite, "Do Not Challenge the Quiet Ones." Strangers from other countries were commenting on it. News channels that covered actual world events were mentioning it during their evening segments, treating a high school gym class like a matter of galactic diplomacy. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because of the video exactly, but because of the last thing I had seen before I left the training room. After everyone had filed out, laughing and replaying footage, I had turned back for one final look and caught Vexthara sitting alone on the edge of the mat, staring at her own hands like she was trying to solve a puzzle only she could see. I went back to school the next morning, expecting chaos, and chaos is exactly what I found. The hallway outside our classroom was packed tighter than I had ever seen it, not because of a fight or an announcement, but because half the school wanted to catch a glimpse of Vexthara walking to first period. She kept her head down, moved quickly, and said nothing to anyone, but I noticed something new in the way people looked at her. It wasn't curiosity anymore, it was something closer to awe, and in a few cases, something closer to fear. Danny wasn't at school that morning. Word spread that he had asked his parents to let him stay home, too embarrassed to face the crowd of people who had already watched the video 40 or 50 times each. I couldn't entirely blame him. Being taken down by anyone hurts. Being taken down in 4 seconds, on video, in front of the entire internet, was an entirely different kind of pain. By lunchtime, a rumor was already circulating that someone from another school wanted to challenge Vexthara for real. Not in a classroom, not with a teacher watching, but somewhere off campus, where nobody could stop it before it went too far. I heard 3 different versions of the story before the final bell rang, and none of them agreed on who exactly wanted the fight or why, but they all agreed on one detail. It was supposed to happen that same night, at the old training gym on the edge of town, the one people used for underground sparring matches that were technically against school rules and definitely against several actual laws. I found Vexthara at her locker after school, and for the first time since she had arrived, I actually spoke to her directly. "You heard the rumors," I said. It wasn't really a question. She closed her locker and looked at me, her expression unreadable in the way that always made it hard to guess what she was thinking. "I have heard several versions," she said. "None of them sound like something I agreed to." "So you're not going?" I did not say that either. I felt a strange pull in my chest, something between worry and curiosity. Why would you even consider it? You already proved your point yesterday. You don't have anything left to prove. She was quiet for a moment, long enough that I thought she might not answer at all. "On my planet," she finally said, "if someone believes you are hiding your full ability, they will keep testing you until you either show them or you leave. I do not wish to leave. This is the only place I have ever been given the chance to learn alongside people my own age." "So you're going to fight some stranger you don't even know, just to prove you're not hiding anything?" "I am going," she said, "because if I do not, the questions will never stop, and I would rather answer them once, clearly, than answer them slowly, for years." I didn't like that answer, but I understood it. There was something in the way she said it, calm but firm, that told me nothing I could say would change her mind. So instead of arguing further, I asked the only other question that mattered. "Then I'm coming with you." She studied me for a long moment, the kind of look that felt like she was recalculating something about me entirely. "Why would you do that? You have no part in this." "Because somebody should be there who isn't filming it for views," I said. "And because if something actually goes wrong, you shouldn't be standing there completely alone." Something shifted in her expression, something small but real, the closest thing to gratitude I had seen from her since she arrived at our school. "Then we should leave soon," she said, "before the sun goes down completely." The old training gym sat at the edge of an industrial lot, a squat brick building, with most of its windows boarded over, and a single working light above the entrance that flickered every few seconds, like it was struggling to stay on at all. By the time we arrived, a crowd had already gathered outside, far bigger than I expected. Students from at least 3 different schools, all buzzing with the same nervous excitement that had filled our classroom the day before. In the middle of that crowd stood a girl I didn't recognize, tall, confident, arms crossed, clearly waiting for exactly this moment. Someone in the crowd told me her name was Priya, a senior from a rival school 2 towns over, known for taking self-defense classes since she was young, and for never backing down from anything that looked like a challenge. "You actually showed up," Priya said, as Vexthara stepped forward, the crowd parting around her like water around a stone. "I half expected you to send an excuse instead." "I do not make excuses," Vexthara said simply. "I make choices. This is one of them." Someone shouted for everyone to move inside, out of sight of the main road, and within minutes we were packed into the old gym, the crowd forming a rough circle on a cracked wooden floor that hadn't seen real maintenance in years. Phones rose into the air on every side, ready to capture whatever was about to happen. I pushed my way to the front of the circle, close enough to see the tension in Vexthara's shoulders, close enough to hear her breathing settle into a slow, steady rhythm. Priya rolled her neck side to side, bouncing slightly on her toes, every movement radiating confidence built from years of training. "No rules," Priya said. "First one who can't get back up loses. That's it." "Understood," Vexthara said. The crowd's noise dropped to almost nothing, the way it had the day before, right before everything changed in less time than it takes to blink. I felt my own pulse hammering in my throat, and for a moment, I wondered if I had made a terrible decision agreeing to come here at all. Priya moved first, faster than I expected, throwing a quick strike toward Vexthara's shoulder, clearly meant to test her reflexes before committing to anything bigger. Vexthara shifted just enough to let it pass harmlessly beside her, no wasted movement, no unnecessary effort, simply enough distance to make the strike miss its mark entirely. "You're quick," Priya said, circling slightly. "Let's see if you're anything else." She came in again, this time with a series of quick strikes strung together, testing angles, testing timing, clearly trying to find some opening she could exploit. Vexthara moved through each attempt like water flowing around stones in a river, never rushed, never surprised, simply present, in exactly the right place, at exactly the right moment. The crowd had gone completely silent now, every phone locked onto the 2 of them, every breath held in unison. I realized I was holding my own breath too, watching so intently that I barely noticed the moment had already stretched past what anyone expected. Priya's frustration started showing in the tightness of her shoulders, the slightly wider stance, the small pause before each attempt as she recalculated her approach. She was skilled, clearly more skilled than Danny had been, but skill against pure timing and instinct honed since childhood on a completely different world was proving to be a very different kind of match. Finally, Priya committed to one last combination, throwing everything she had into a sequence meant to overwhelm, through sheer speed and volume. For a fraction of a second, it looked like it might actually work, like she had finally found the gap she'd been searching for. Then Vexthara stepped inside the combination, instead of away from it, closing the distance rather than retreating, and with one smooth motion that seemed to happen faster than my eyes could properly track, Priya was on the ground, not thrown violently, not slammed, simply guided down with the same careful control Vexthara had shown the day before. The room stayed silent for one full second, then erupted into noise louder than anything I had heard in the gym at school. Priya lay there for a moment, staring up at the ceiling exactly like Danny had, chest rising and falling as she caught her breath, more stunned than anything else. How, Priya finally managed, how is that even possible? Vexthera offered her hand, and this time, unlike Danny, Priya actually took it, letting herself be pulled back to standing. You fight like someone who has never lost, Vexthera said, not unkindly. That makes you predictable, in ways you do not expect. You commit fully, because you have never needed a backup plan. Priya stared at her for a long moment, something shifting behind her eyes, moving from disbelief toward something closer to respect. That's the first time anyone's ever taken me down that clean, she said. I want a rematch. But not tonight. Tonight I just want to understand how you did that. Vexthera actually smiled then, the first real smile I had seen from her since she arrived at our school. I would like that, she said. A conversation, rather than another match. The crowd slowly began to disperse, still buzzing with excitement, still recording, still talking over each other about what they had just witnessed. I stayed near Vexthara as the gym emptied out, watching her posture relax for the first time all evening. You okay? I asked, once most of the crowd had cleared. I am, she said, though I did not expect tonight to end in conversation, rather than conflict. Would you rather it had ended differently? She considered the question seriously, the way she seemed to consider everything. No, she said finally. I think this is better. On my planet, we are taught that defeating someone teaches you very little about them. It only teaches you what they cannot do. A real conversation teaches you everything else. We walked out of the gym together into the cool night air, the crowd thinning into small groups heading toward cars and bus stops, phones still glowing with replays of everything that had just happened. I glanced sideways at her, still processing the fact that in less than 24 hours, I had watched 2 people get taken down in seconds by someone the whole school had barely noticed, just 2 days earlier. So what happens now? I asked. After tonight, I mean. Everyone at school is going to want a piece of this. Then everyone at school will have to learn what Danny and Priya learned tonight, she said. That strength is not something to fear, and it is not something to chase either. It is simply something to understand. We reached the edge of the lot where our paths would split, her heading toward the transit stop, me heading toward home. Before she left, she turned back toward me one more time. Thank you for coming tonight, she said. Not many people would have. Somebody had to make sure this didn't turn into something worse, I said. Besides, I wanted to see it for myself, not just through everyone else's phone screens. She nodded once. That same small, deliberate movement I had seen the day before, right before everything changed. Then perhaps next time, she said, you will not just watch. Perhaps you will learn as well. I laughed, surprising myself with how easily it came after everything that had happened. Maybe I will, I said. As I walked home that night, phone buzzing constantly with notifications from a video that was still climbing higher by the minute, I realized something I hadn't expected to realize at the start of the week. The quietest person in our entire school had just become the most talked about person in the whole city, not because she wanted attention, but because she refused to let people define her by their assumptions. And somehow, without meaning to, she had taught an entire school something far more valuable than how to win a fight. She had taught us how to actually pay attention to the people we had been overlooking all along. By the time I reached my front door, the video had crossed 3 million views, and somewhere in the comments, someone had already started calling her the Quiet Storm. It wasn't wrong, it just wasn't the whole story either. The whole story was something only a handful of us had actually witnessed, standing in a crowded old gym on the edge of town, watching someone prove, without a single wasted movement, that being underestimated was never something to fear. It was simply something to outlast, one calm, steady moment at a time.